Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Adam Winters. I'm Joe Gould, and we are reviewing not Rankin Bass, but Rankin Bass inspired A Miser's Brother's Christmas from 2008.
Wait, what's the apostrophe on that? A miser brothers plural apostrophe Christmas?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I'm not sure it works as a title.
In view of what the movie actually is?
I don't know if I like it grammatically or in light of the movie. I don't know. Not a fan of the title. I don't like that apostrophe. Figure out a way to make that without it.
A miser brother singular Christmas? Even though it is both of them. Return of the Misers?
How about The Year Without a Santa Claus 2, A Miserly Occasion?
I think this movie comes a little bit closer to delivering on that promise than the 1970 film, 1974, whatever it was.
Maybe. So I want to say up front, I just got done editing The Year Without a Santa Claus, and we were debating basically whether or not we would give it 2.5 up to 3 whatevers, jingle jangles. And I just want to say up front, this has to be below 2.5 whatevers because I just wasn't feeling this movie.
Well, I was perfectly okay with it. I didn't think it was the greatest stop motion thing I'd ever seen, but it sort of did what it promised for me, I think.
I don't know. I think if you're going to take a Rankin Bass property and make a sequel, this is not one of those. I think I said during the Ernest movie, like Santa's one to hang it up. And I said, better to be a half-ass Santa than to not have Santa at all. It is not better to half-ass a Rankin Bass remake than just to not do one at all.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on that now. What's your complaint? Story, animation quality, music, voice acting?
I would say animation style, not so much quality. That's probably not the right word. All right, so I should just say, one of my pet peeves of these new, pretty much every stop motion thing they've done inspired by Rankin Bass is if you're going to do a Rankin Bass movie, leave the computer at home. Use it for your camera, I get that. But no CGI effects, no blue screens, no little touch-ups. Let it be. Let it be.
So I noticed a little bit. In fact, early on, I didn't watch any of the behind the scenes making the movie. I was not sure, because I didn't know this came out so relatively recently, whether it was stop motion or CGI. So I think on the one hand, it's a credit to the animators, but as you watch it, it does become clear they use some CGI helps, or whatever you want to call them, visual effect overlays. I didn't think it was terrible, but I hear you. You would never mistake the heat miser's fireballs for cotton candy in this movie, for better or worse.
No, and there's a void to be filled, and maybe one day I can help fill it. Like when I want to watch stop motion, I want it to be stop motion. I want the wires. I want the plastic wrap water. I want it to be physical. I want there to be texture. And so if you're going to do a Rankin Bass movie, they didn't do any of that stuff. They did 2D animation and they did stop motion. Like, you want to pull out a leprechaun effect, a leprechaun gold effect, where you have like an animated sequence within it. I'm okay with that. It's not my preference, but like, stick to the spirit of Rankin Bass. And they didn't do it.
Let me just pick your brain here. So obviously when Heat Miser and Snow Miser, they flame war each other, or snowball war each other, their projectiles seem to be CGI. Are you thinking of the climax scene when a black hole appears that may or may not be a polar vortex?
So, I mean, most of the backgrounds, not all, I don't even know if most, some of the background shots in this movie were blue screen. They showed that on the making of video. It kind of confirmed what you kind of already knew, right?
Okay.
And then they did little animation effects, the little like the fireballs and stuff like that. Like most of those, if not all, were not stop motion. So I'm just saying, like, it loses at least 1.5 of the 5 whatevers in my mind, just because it doesn't get that right. It spent 9.5 months in this movie. I don't know.
Now, can I come back and can I challenge a little bit, saying that in the original, were there scenes where they overlaid a snowflake falling effect over the shot that might be considered an early visual effect equivalent in the 1970s take?
I mean, if they did it with King Kong in the 30s, I think it's fair game.
But does that dent your
I don't.
argument in any way.
No, I don't think so. Well, yeah, but it's an overlay. It's not the same thing. It's not computer generated. It doesn't look fake. I
But
mean, it is
but
fake. It does look fake. Don't get me wrong, but
the backgrounds could be considered not an overlay, but the same type of.
they filmed something.
They did. All right.
So one other nitpick in terms of the visual is I know why they did it, but I think all these people need to rethink these oversized puppets.
They were big, weren't they?
They were, but I think in all the stuff they've recreated on Rankin Bass, they've gone with these oversized puppets, and I don't think it gets the effect they're wanting. I know why they're doing it, because they want it to be more fluid and more detailed because of HD cameras. But again, if you're watching this kind of movie, you don't care, and it loses something. It loses something of the effect of like the little toys come to life.
Do you have an estimate on how much bigger these puppets would have been than the original film?
So they looked like they were about 2 feet tall on the making of video.
They did.
And I would imagine most of the old stuff is like 6 to 9 inches at the most. I might be wrong, but that seems to be more standard size.
They could have had separate puppets for close-up shots, like if you wanted more detail on the face.
Yeah, but yeah, it looks like the standard puppets here were a couple of feet tall. I mean, they're big. They're like big puppets, which makes the sets more difficult too. You wouldn't have to do the CGI stuff on these sets if you just made normal-sized puppets, a la Tim Burton Nightmare Before Christmas.
So I was interested in how they decided to film the mouse effects, as in the talking. They had magnetic teeth and everything they would put on to some of the puppets.
Yeah, at least
I thought
Jay
that
Leno.
was interesting. I didn't know if that was done in the older style or not.
That's something I want to spend some time looking at. I think they just put like pieces of felt on the little wooden heads back in the day. I don't know how they stuck it on there. I assume they used tape, but
yeah,
I'm good with the idea of the magnet mouth. It seems like it can be difficult to take it off and put another one on without moving the puppet. But
yes,
I'm good with the magnetic mouth. But yeah,
I gotta also give this movie credit. They seem to do a pretty good job on fabric and hair, not giving the tells of movement.
Yeah, no, they did a good job with the actual moving of the puppets. Like it's pretty well done, I think. They do good with. I don't care for the character of the wind guy, but
Northwind. That's his name.
I think he goes by Jay Leno these days. But they said they spent a long time on that guy's wig, and I believe it.
I will give you that this movie has a little bit too much Northwind in it for me. We can talk more about as the plot develops. He is interesting. I feel like the conclusion is not particularly satisfying as relates to him. This movie also had a lot to do with the little tinsel elf that I found a little too much. If Heat Miser and Snow Miser are too much, a little tinsel goes a long way. And that's not everybody's preference for a tree decoration.
Yeah. The more I saw tinsel, I kept thinking to myself, they've actually done it. I want my jingle and my jangle back. Maybe a little Izzy. But
there's a lot of characters missing from the previous film that you would have thought could have been worked into this one, including the elf doctor, the grumpy old elf doctor that is nowhere to be seen in this one.
Yeah, so here's my other pet peeve, I think, of this movie. Ultimately speaking, it's not horrible, just for the record. But they took all the sarcasm out of the Rankin Bass movie. They have the Miser brothers go back and forth with some little, what they think are witty one-liners. Some of them are pretty good. But, Rankin Bass is like the old Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner-esque stuff. Like it pushes the envelope, gives a little innuendo, not necessarily in the Year Without Santa Claus, but in their stuff, like everything's got a little edge to it. And this movie had no edge, like at all.
Let's see. Hold on. Let me. We'd be spoiling a little bit of the plot. There are 2 instances of attempted homicide on Santa Claus that are framed in the context of make it look like an accident. At least one of them.
All right, so I did appreciate that. All right, you got me there. In terms of the plot, I agree with you. I'll give you that. But in terms of the dialogue and the way the characters interact, that's really what I meant. Very G-rated. A G-rated movie with an R-rated plot.
The interactions between characters. There was a little bit. I'll admit I was hoping for more in regards to Mother Nature's connection to both the Misers and ultimately Norse Wind. Because the Mither brothers make the comment that Mother Nature is going to kill them. Is that after they believe they may have killed Santa Claus?
Yes.
And your imagination runs a little wild with that. Because this is a pretty serious deal. You know, Christmas is ruined, whatever that's going to
Apparently,
mean.
it just involves dishes, though.
Yeah, that's disappointing to me. The chores. They're going to work more chores.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have Jay Leno attempting murder twice, and he gets to do the dishes. That's his punishment.
I mean,
and this isn't some low-profile murder of like the Tooth Fairy either. This is Santa Claus.
Christmas is ruined. I don't know if they can pass on to the New Year without Santa Claus. Unknown. Boy, if he'd have gone after the New Year's baby too, that would have been interesting.
Yeah. Now, this movie is not going to inspire someone to go make a stop-motion animated movie. Whereas even the people making this they heard about the opportunity to make a Rankin Bass-inspired movie, and they were just like all over themselves.
I enjoyed that documentary, and it made me more interested in it. But
it made me enjoy. I enjoyed the documentary more than the movie. And again, it wasn't horrible. We've watched worse. Let's be clear. But if you're gonna take the Miser brothers, let's do it right. Do it right.
Do you think this movie would have benefited by a slightly longer runtime? I think it comes in about 44 to 48 minutes, somewhere about that.
No, I don't think so. Hour and a half stop motion is too much.
They would have shoved more tinsel in our face. Probably more of the Council of Mother Nature's family reunion people. Did you feel shortchanged by the family reunion scene?
Well, so when I saw that it was taking this basically a board meeting, a departmental meeting, I thought we would get more than two. But I guess they did have the Misers make a big mess, so they gave themselves an out. But they should have had a couple of throwaway lines. They should have had a couple of them do little throwaway things to set up the cloud guy, or the wind guy, I mean.
North Wind. So, on the subject of North Wind, he seems very much superfluous to me. You're introducing a new character, even though you already have a cold miser, who it was set up in the previous film is largely responsible for temperatures in different regions, and he has a territorial war with his brother Heat Miser. But North Wind does something else, and theoretically he has domain over the North Pole if Santa Claus, you invoke the 25th Amendment or whatever. If Santa Claus is unable to perform his duties, somehow North Wind gets dominion unless Mother Nature has a different idea.
Well, and it's kind of a plot problem, too, because in the prior movie, Snow Miser, Cold Miser, whatever his name is, he has dominion over the North Pole.
Does he?
He grants it for a day.
Deal, don't they? They have to make a deal. Yeah.
So I mean, what they're going for here is the idea of this tornado force, the wind, or like visually they could have done a little bit more to give them a kind of a tornado look, sort of just a purple glaze. But no, I think the plot has problems inherently, and I think what you just said is right.
You would think that North Wind would have a counterpart, a South Wind, something like that. Mr. Equator.
Seems like he's working. Seems like he should be working for the Cold Miser, Snow Miser.
Okay, Mother Nature there. Who's the father of these guys? Is what I want to know. Father
Zeus.
Time? Oh no,
Father Time's
gotta be Father Time.
That's rocking the cradle.
Oh man, that can of worms has been opened there.
Yep. So a little more background on the movie. It's made in 2008 by Warner Brothers Animation under their Warner Premiere label, largely done by Cup of Coffee Studios, and it premiered on ABC Family. I didn't look it up.
Cup of coffee.
And it's 1 hour. It was aired as a 1 hour block on ABC Family, and Saturday, December 13th, 2008, during their annual The 25 Days of Christmas programming. I think I saw somewhere that it did a little over 3 million viewers.
Was that good for ABC Family?
I mean, that would be a huge rating today. For 2008, unclear. But yeah. And Mickey Rooney at age 88 and George S. Irving at 86 reprised their roles as Santa Claus and Heat Miser. So that's pretty cool movie.
So it feels like when this movie opens, we get Mrs. Claus doing the narration. And
yes.
like many of these Rankin Bass things, she's summarizing what has come before. But we do cut back to her when we realize she's actually in the present for this movie. It's like right before somebody has to leave in the sleigh for Christmas Eve. Did I follow that right?
Yeah, and I appreciated that they brought it back to reality, that opening intro. And they basically caught up with that spot. It didn't take very long either. I thought it'd be longer.
Yeah. It
And
takes a little while for this movie to get to the Miser Brothers. I forget the runtime, but it's a little bit disappointing when it is the Miser Brothers movie and it takes so long to actually introduce them.
well, it's a pretty lengthy setup, and I'm not sure they need it. And it's all revolves around Tinsel, the youngest chief mechanic, who apparently is following her father's footsteps and has built this new jet sled, basically. But it needs a test ride.
Did her father elf die? Is that something that happens to elves in this reality?
I mean, it's black and white photos on the wall. It's implied that he died of old elf age, which these elves do appear to be more childlike in general. So maybe they don't. Maybe they live like dogs and they just don't make it past 12 or 13.
You think Jingle Jangle, they're dead and pushing up daisies in the North Pole?
I mean, Santa's lost some hair.
Huh.
Mrs. Claus, I don't think, looks anything like her old self.
The doctor's been replaced. He's, kind of dark when you think about all that, isn't it?
He may have been fired.
He was working for Northwind secretly.
He's an HR problem. You can kind of tell. And basically what we just described there in about 35 seconds, it took about 10 minutes, it felt like, in this movie.
What do you think of the replacement sleigh that Tinsel has built?
It's very
I'm not a big fan of it. I was going to say it's more like 1960s, something like it's a streamlined. They try to make it a little bullet-shaped bumper car that is going to be a much more constrictive fit for a chubby fella like Santa Claus, especially if he has other passengers riding with him.
That is true. No, I wasn't a big fan. I like the classic design.
It does not look comfortable to get in and out of. It might be fun when you're riding around on it, but I'd also say it has a parachute. Maybe she could have worked some other stuff into it. Little jet boosters.
These tighter screws.
Ooh, okay, yeah, we can talk about that, but it was way too easy to sabotage that thing.
2 bolts and it falls apart.
Man, Nintendo products have better security than that. You got to have specialized screwdrivers. Hit maybe 5 or 6 points.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. So then the movie shifts to the Miser brothers, who are getting into an argument on their way to a family reunion. And then Mother Nature pulls off a Galactus space cloud kind of visual and tells them to behave and transports them to the garden where they have a business meeting with all the children. And I didn't write down all of them, but there's like 6 or 7.
I forgot.
Let's see here if I got it.
While you're looking that up, the Miser brothers talk amongst themselves that they know they're not supposed to fight on the day of the reunion. But this movie is pretty clear they're only a few short days out from Christmas. And in the last movie, they were battling constantly. So is it just one day when they have their annual December reunion, they don't fight?
Yeah, I don't know. So you have at the reunion, you have Mother Nature, and you have Heat Miser and Snow Miser. I would like to point out that it should be fire and snow or heat and cold. It's very confusing when it's heat and snow.
Yeah, it's inconsistent. It is. I've thought of that myself.
The other siblings is the North Wind, Earthquake, not the wrestler, Thunder and Lightning, and the Tides.
Oh, I like Thunder and Lightning there. Although, again, sometimes I wonder if they're superfluous because it seems like some of the other characters can do that Thunder stuff too.
It seems like most of these people, with the exception of maybe the Tides, should really be consultants for heat and snow. They're instruments of ruling, so to speak. And then, so at the meeting, Wendy gets up and says, everything's 100% efficient. One concern is with the good children needing to get their presents. He's eyeing for the Santa job. He's looking to off Santa Claus.
Yep.
He's also got a Leno chin.
Very suspicious. That was big in that era, I think. Just the big old Leno.
They should have got him to voice
chin. Yeah. That would have been good.
So
I think it would have improved the character a little bit.
So the Mother Nature approves the request in the sense of if something was to happen to Santa, Wendy would get Christmas, including in the South, apparently.
Maybe she should have talked to Santa Claus about
You would
that,
think.
too.
I guess where does Santa fall in this hierarchy?
He's not invited to the family reunion, which suggests Mother Nature ain't his mother. So I see a little difference of a sovereignty sphere here going on.
And then the Miser brothers give their report, and they basically accuse each other of sabotage and smear campaigns regarding global warming, and an upcoming ice age. And then they bicker about Iceland and Greenland too.
I liked that. So I'm impressed this movie wanted to make a joke about global warming without going all in on some Ted Turner Captain Planet, make everybody feel guilty. They didn't do it. I appreciate that. They just stuck to the story. And I was amused at the Greenland Iceland because the only other movie I was aware that made a big point of that was Mighty Ducks 2. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's my favorite part of that little exchange.
No, it's probably the best writing of the movie too. And Mother Nature tells them basically what becomes the plot of this movie, which is they need to find a way to exist together in balance and harmony.
Well, they seem to be doing a pretty good job of that on their own. About, they make deals for territory. So here's a plot point maybe. In this movie, their castles are right next to each other. Lava Land and not Iceland, Cold Land, Snowland. I don't get that impression from Year Without a Santa Claus 1970s version. They look like they had a little bit of distance between their territories. And when they had battles, they do it in the sky, not from castle to castle. So we did not look at that live action Year Without a Santa Claus, but I think that movie put them right next to each other.
So I saw stills of photos from that movie, and I am not watching that movie.
Not even John Goodman can draw you in.
Yeah, I like the idea of them not being right next to each other since they are apparently running the globe.
Yeah.
So
no, it's weird they're right next to each other in this movie, and that creates most of the drama about being bad neighbors. Like they don't like the air rights, or the Heat Miser dams up the ravine or something like that.
What they're doing is they're pulling a scene together to be similar to the first movie when the Vixen is flying through and kind of gets caught in the crossfire, where they're having like a little cloud fight. But there's not implied that they live in those spots.
Right.
In the first movie.
No, that's just where they were fighting territory at that point.
And this movie takes that, and then you build the Bowser house, and then the ice sickle, and then I don't know. Maybe they had to move. Maybe Quake got them.
Maybe their territory was reduced by the Norse wind. Maybe that's why they just they got demoted a little bit after that 74 event. So what happens after the reunion scene? I'm a little bit forgetful on my timeline.
They pick the pacing up at this point, and this is where you have the first attempt on Santa's life by Wendy. Santa is trying out the new sleigh, and the wind guy sends out 2 minions who fly underneath the sleigh, and they remove 2 screws at a convenient time because it needs to look like an accident, you see. And it's real close to where he's flying by the miser's house, and they're throwing CGI projectiles at each other, and they want it to look like he got caught in the crossfire, and he crashes around that spot. And even the Miser brothers think that that's what happened.
So this is partially on Santa Claus here. He knows where the Miser brothers live. He didn't have this problem in the 74 movie. It's his choice to fly into that zone that he should expect to be an open war zone. It's not why he got shot down or sabotaged, but to me that's a curious error on an experienced Santa pilot.
Did he get caught in the crossfire on purpose, or did he lose the ability to steer the sleigh once the screws came out?
How far away would he? You shouldn't come anywhere near this area. I expect that kind of junk from Jingle and Jangle and a little Vixen. They fly into those areas because they too dumb, but this is Santa Claus, the only competent character in 1974 film.
So they go to a commercial break at this spot. And when they come back, the reindeer get cut loose, and he uses a parachute, which I think Tinsel told him about on the radio, to glide down to the ground. And at first, it looks like
ejections.
Yeah, at first, it kind of looks like they don't hear him on the radio and they think he might be dead. And quite honestly, that would have been a much more interesting plot. But we immediately find that they went and got him, and he is laid up in bed with a sore back. But otherwise, he's fine.
Yeah. Which apparently he already had the sore back. This just pushed it to a much more aggravated level.
So the movie had the opportunity to be Santa Slays, Slays, and it goes back to Santa Slays, Sleighs. They could have been so much more interesting if they thought he was dead.
It would have been more interesting, yeah, that nobody knows where Santa is. I don't know how they would have set up the conclusion scene.
Well, it'd been a whole different movie, much better movie, probably.
Yeah, it might have been. It probably would have been.
Tinsel feels guilty. Why? But they thought it got caught in the crossfire at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. What can you do about that? If you got hit by fire and ice, how are you supposed to defend against that?
And Mother Nature scolds the brothers. Wendy shows up. They're told that Santa's not dead. So you would think, based off what happened 5 to 10 minutes earlier in the movie, that Wendy would get the opportunity to run Christmas. But no, she says, I think the brothers ought to do it. They have to learn to work together and fix their mistake.
Not a great plan.
No. Now, at this point, Wendy doesn't look that upset about not getting to play Santa this year, even though big picture, that's what he wants to do. But instead, he's going to just assume that the brothers won't get along, and he's going to go fine-tune his Santa killing plan and figure out a way to get Santa to leave the North Pole so he's an open duck again, basically. And I think at some point he does some songs in here too, by the way. The music in this movie is not that great, with the exception of the Miser song.
No.
I think they actually do improve it with the remix.
Yeah, they have the song that already existed. I was hoping there would be some unused lyrics to the original composition that they might have been able to work into this movie and extend it. But the little remix is nice. They get to sing each other's parts at different points.
I make a note here that the villain looks like a cross between Leno and a Mega Man villain.
Mega Man. Maybe. Huh. I saw he had a little bit of a look like Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince, who became Prince again.
Just because you're purple doesn't mean you're Prince. And then the elves get the misers dressed up in their Santa suits and kind of bring them up to speed, let them know that productivity's down 20%. And they have an answer to that one. They both bring out 5 minions to run the toy shop, which this toy shop does not seem large enough.
I am curious, since these movies get set in more and more contemporary times, how many kids are asking for handmade toys? Not a whole lot of kids in the United States, I wouldn't think.
No, you definitely don't think you get enough revenue off that to get a whole new sleigh. But this is where we get the Misers remix song, basically. And they're kind of just taking turns going back and forth. And they're basically the snow misers making little ice bunnies out of blocks of ice, and heat misers making diamonds within ash, so to speak. It's kind of unclear.
I wasn't clear either. I will take the diamonds over the frozen toys.
It seems like delivery in the South would be a problem on those frozen toys too. Maybe all the snow misers toys are going to be in the North, and all the heat misers stuff's going to be in the South.
Would have made sense if they if they could repair that second sleigh, just let each of them go on a southern hemisphere.
So head elf gets a little nervous about all this, goes and gets Mrs. Claus. She comes and sees what the mess is going on and says, oh, she's got to do something drastic to save Christmas. Commercial break. So in both movies, Mrs. Claus likes to try to fix things.
Yeah. And this one she actually does, though.
Yes.
Even though she gets the idea from Santa Claus.
So then they get the old sled out, and we get another Mrs. Claus narration summary, as if we hadn't just watched just 10 minutes of the show. And we find out that toy manufacturing is down to zero. She's talking to Santa about it, and he says he doubts, based off of their history on the naughty and nice list, that it's going to work out. And then Ma gets her idea.
Yeah. One of her better ones.
So she brings the misers to the naughty and nice room, where they are shocked to see that everything you do is recorded. You are always on video.
It's a little creepy how they set that up. It seems to me the most recent thing you've done, however trivial, is what gets your status updated on the naughty and nice. Kind of a binary yes or no.
Ones and zeros, yes and no. But all the ones and the zeros seem to be permanently recorded in video format as well. And she pulls out the video from the archives of the baby misers. And we find that there was just a misunderstanding when they were, babies, set off this lifelong rivalry. A fireplace spark and a snowflake from a window.
Yeah.
And we get another song.
Those who live in glass houses.
When you fight, day and night, you know it isn't right. You must live in harmony.
Not a big fan of that song. Yeah,
they spent 9.5 months and they didn't get anybody who can rhyme.
Yeah, I'm not sure. In some cases, I might like the tune, but I don't like the vocals. I guess it's their big Christmas song. What's that one called in this movie?
Well, I made a note at the beginning. I didn't like it because they had all the elves screaming as part of the lyrics. It's very unpleasing.
Yeah, it was not performed well. It had a decent little jingle, but performance left a lot to be desired.
Yeah. And this is where we have the Grinch moment where the heart grows, and they realize, because they've always been complaining that Santa never brings them presents. And now they realize that they never got presents because they're always fighting. And they shake hands, and I wrote down, motivations seem off. We're going to like each other so that we can get Christmas presents.
Yeah, I feel like creatures in their status should probably be immune to Santa Claus deliveries, because they're sort of, whether they like it or not, they're on the same team to some degree. Move the seasons along of Earth.
They got a PR advertising deal, which was discussed in the last movie.
I still feel like Heat Miser has an odd inferiority complex. Because I think if you took a poll of most people, they'd prefer temperatures in the 60 degrees, probably below 100, versus anything from 40 and below. They're going to prefer Heat Miser Club.
Then we get another version of the Miser song. This time they sing about each other. And the toy factory starts running smooth. Now they're on the same page. And at this point, though, Wendy decides, they might pull this off. I need to get them to fight again. So that Santa will feel the need to do it himself. And so when he flies the sleigh, they can attempt to take him out one more time. And there's a hint that something's going to happen here. As he's saying this plot, a postcard of him in a Santa suit blows out the window.
Which is not exactly a full indictment of anything, but I guess you could figure it out.
If you wear a Santa hat, you obviously are attempting to kill Santa.
Well, I wear one from time to time.
Something happens to Santa this year. The listeners of this podcast are going to know what to do.
They're going to come looking at me.
So apparently he gets his little minions to attach something underneath the sleigh on both sides. Can't quite tell what it is at first, but it's a ice and fire type of contraption. And when they go to get into the sleigh, their feet hit it, and Snowmeister gets burned, and Heatmeister gets frozen-ish. And they decide that the other one was basically they both decide that the other one was trying to just be friends, just on appearance's sake, so that they could go and either thaw or melt the other guy's regions.
It's all about the territory wars.
And you get a big fight, and Santa does feel like he's just got to do it himself.
It is a lame fight, though. They're throwing little things at each other.
Yeah, and then
it might have been fun if that fight had went bigger.
At some point we get another narration. Santa's getting dressed. He does take off. The misers are still fighting, kind of slap fighting down there. And the postcard hits one of their faces. And at the same time, Wendy goes on the attack on Santa.
He goes all out, too.
And they kind of go back and forth, but basically he's trying to pull the pin where the reindeer are attached to the sleigh, and also get him sucked into a vortex at the same time. A little sloppy.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, why do you go through the trouble of unbuckling the sleigh? But I guess if the reindeer exist, they could pull him out of the vortex.
I would think a tornado could suck up a sled or a sleigh with 8 reindeer. It can move buildings.
See, I thought this was a polar vortex, which is not the same as an outright tornado.
So at the same time that's going on, Tinsel determines that her sleigh was sabotaged and that it was unscrewed on purpose. And then the wind postcard lands, and they put 2 and 2 together. Ruh-roh.
And they're able to quickly convince the Miser brothers this is what happened. You've been set up by your goody two-shoes brother.
And then Tinsel brings out her almost fixed sleigh, led by baby reindeer.
One of them has a name. At first, I thought it was cobbler, but I think you're right. It sounded like Doppler radar. Doppler.
So I'm not quite sure how Santa has not been sucked into that vortex by now.
Strategic timing, as
But
far as these things go.
Yeah.
Hyper
Well, they figure out how to get the reindeer to fly, and they take off, and they get up to Santa's. What did they do to Wendy?
Well, he's still doing his vortex thing. I didn't think they messed
Well,
with him.
he just seems to disappear slightly.
Did they? Did
Well, I
they
don't
throw
know
something at him?
Well, so they make an ice bridge between the sleighs, so they can go pull Santa and his bag across.
Yeah.
And I feel like Wendy would be.
They're already in the vortex.
I just feel like Wendy would be doing something to prevent this from happening, but they really don't show him.
They could have given Tinsel a little pebble gun or something to pop him with. That would have been fun to watch. Because she doesn't do anything else on this flight, I don't think.
But then they Ernest it up, and they end up being in the bad sleigh, the broken sleigh, while Santa's in the good one, and they start crashing, I believe. Yeah.
I enjoy the dialogue between them as they give each other their final farewells.
No, it was good. And then the adult reindeer from Santa's sleigh, I keep saying sled, come down, and they pick up the Miser brothers to save them. And you get a final attack from Wendy on Santa, but Tinsel from the ground counters it. Well, the parachute catches him like a net, basically.
Oh, that's right. The parachute deal again.
They drag him back to the North Pole, and we have the big conclusion. Mother Nature, what are you going to do? 2 times attempted homicide, probably more than that. Count the misers. Oh, yeah. He gets to do dishes for the next couple thousand years.
Whose dishes is he doing?
I guess the dishes from the reunion.
Okay. That only happens once a year, though. Huh.
Maybe he's doing the dishes from the little school that they showed in the last movie that's only open on Sundays.
Okay, sure.
Cafeteria worker.
That would be
horrible. And then the misers find out that they made the nice list this year.
Yeah, good for them. They ought to be above that, though, given their status.
Oh, agreed. Then Santa is like, yo, everybody, we need to get focused on the job here. We haven't actually accomplished anything yet.
He is hurt bad.
So the movie concludes with the misers flying away, delivering presents to all the little boys and girls. It will not be a blue Christmas.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to sit through that again.
And it ends with them each handing each other a present, and each one says Merry Christmas.
Credits.
Yep, end credits. So have I convinced you this movie's not very good?
No, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5, whatever it is. It never rises to any great heights, but it does give me what I came for.
So I'm gonna give it 2. 2 Tinsels? Magnetic mouths. I don't know.
Oh, magnetic mouse. Okay, yeah, I like that.
I don't think I'd want another miser movie. These are small dose people. These should be guest stars, not headliners. They can have their one headline, but I think they're better served in guest roles.
There's only so much you can do with them before you ruin their complete character identity. If they get along too well, they're not interesting.
No, yeah. They're much less interesting when they're getting along in this movie.
I guess that's the inherent problem of the movie's aim, to get them to work together. But, deep down, they still can't stand each other. That was their final words to each other as they embraced at the brink of destruction.
No, they're the family members that you tolerate being around, but you don't actually like them. But they're still your family.
Yeah. That's the great takeaway of this movie. After all that's happened, brother, I still can't stand you. That's the Christmas message that can bring us all together, perhaps. I don't know. It's what this country needs right now.
So you got any other thoughts on the Miser Family Christmas? That's probably what they should have called the movie.
The Family Christmas. I like that. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of their reunion, but would it add much more to the movie? I don't really think so. As I said before, it's not a year without a Santa Claus, but this was the year without the Santa Claus. They got a replacement.
You could have said it's the year with Santa Clauses.
Oh.
2 of them.
Stepping on the Disney Tim Allen IP there.
Or Clauses. Maybe that's...
Clauses.
What's a plural clause?
I think it's just ES. Okay. You have clause and you put ES at the end of it, right?
I think so.
The Santa Clauses. The Santa Clauses. Not the clauses, but the Clauses.
It still annoys me that you have a heat and a snow miser.
That's fair. Yeah.
Mostly because I keep forgetting Snow Miser's name and calling him Cold Miser.
Right, because it would work better that way.
Yeah. There's
Maybe
definitely
that's the source of their conflict. Maybe that just bugs everybody in a very passive aggressive way that they don't match, even though they're twins and brothers.
they don't look alike. I mean, they do look adopted. Well, I've made my gripes known. I do appreciate a few things about it. I'm not quite sure how you're giving it 3 since you don't like the music. Um,
No, it
and you
doesn't
didn't
have
like the
stand out,
plot.
but it's just
You don't like the music. You don't like the plot.
no. I
And
like the homicidal plot. I just think it could have used a little bit more. You get the Miser brothers in the middle of a homicide on Santa Claus. That that I like.
Santa should have been assumed dead. The miser should have been accused on trial. That should have been the middle. That should have been the second part of the movie. Second
What
out.
you're
The second
describing to me
act.
is a 4-star movie or a four magnet movie. You give me that. I would have liked to have seen their little duet with their theme songs have a little bit more climactic connection to the plot resolution. It is an important thing when they come together, but it just feels like it would have had more weight if you could have reprised that or saved that for later in the movie. And it would have at least given this the opportunity to rise to a little bit height of something more memorable than what we got.
Yeah. So let me take this from four magnets to 5 magnets. So
Ooh,
keep the remix song they did in the toy store or the toy shop. I'm good with that. People want to hear it. But then when they become friends, that's when you bring in the new lyrics.
yeah. Hey, there you go. Something memorable. A little
Yeah.
musical climax there. I like it. I like it a lot.
I need to make movies. All right. Well, that has been the Miser's Family Christmas, or a Miser's Brother Christmas, a non-Rankin Bass stop motion with CGI, relatively decently made.
Yeah.
I'll give it props. I'm glad they got Mickey Rooney and George Irving to reprise the roles. They should have interviewed them for the documentary. That's just lazy. And now they're dead.
Joe, this movie could have been so much worse in 2008 than what
Oh,
it
I know.
was.
That's why I said I'm irritated. If this wasn't based off Rankin Bass, then it just leaves a little bit of the wrong taste in my mouth because I don't know.
It could have been great. I think it could have been. It wasn't, but eh, I'm
And I'm
fine
the
with it.
first to say A Year Without a Santa Claus is by far not my favorite Rankin Bass movie. So it's more of the
Oh
spirit
no.
of what they did with the IP than it is the finished product.
Yeah,
So
I hear you.
so this will probably wrap up, I guess, our Christmas stuff.
There's more stuff we could do. I just don't know if we should do it anymore.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, that's been the Miser Family Christmas. Hope everybody has a wonderful holidays and catch you soon.
Oh, oh, oh.